Hello, my name is Curry Bird, recovered alcoholic and recovering human. I'm the host and founder of the Recovery My Way podcast, a podcast about how I recovered from alcoholism by realizing one simple truth, that I could not drink. As a result of this moment of clarity, I have not found it necessary to drink alcohol to change the way I feel since July the 20th of 1997. I am also the co-founder of the Freedom Through Choice Foundation, a nonprofit that focuses on helping humanity reclaim their personal power and to realize the power of their own choices and how choices affect their life every day. I have also come to know that I am not special, unique, or different just because I drank irresponsibly. I'm no different than anyone that I have met or will ever meet because of this. I am on my personal journey just as you are, the human journey. I would like to share my journey with you and hope that something I've experienced on my road to recovery just might help another human being who still struggles with any addiction. I owe my life to my addiction because for me it was a fast track to self-discovery. I would like to welcome you to the Recovery My Way podcast. How's it going, everybody? Today, Deb and I are going to talk a little bit about the energy of sober, which, there's a lot to that. Essentially, you're starting out, you've decided to quit drinking, you're going to change your life, you're making a new direction in your life. So I want to start out, I want to read the definition of sober and read the definition of energy, or definition of sobriety, I should say. Sobriety is the condition of not having any measurable levels or effects from alcohol or drugs. Sobriety is also considered to be the natural state of a human being at birth. Now, the definition of energy is the strength and vitality required for sustained physical or mental activity. I guess I'll springboard on this definition of sobriety, especially the second part. Sobriety is also considered to be the natural state of a human being at birth. This is when you've started out, you're brand new to the world. There's nothing, you have not been exposed to anybody's stuff at that point. Your parents' stuff, nobody's stuff. You're fresh on the planet, which I believe, I'm an energy kind of guy. So I believe that's why, people are really attracted to babies, because babies are nothing but love. That is where we are, I believe, comparatively, when we decide to get sober. We've made a choice to do something about our drinking and try to change our life, or to change our life. We don't try to do anything, just eliminate the word try. It's just a bullshit word anyway. Which means, to me, is that we're talking about doing a complete 180 on everything we did. That's what I did. Because all the ways that I had thought, all the energy that I had put forth in staying drunk or, stoned or whatever, was a self-defeating energy, which, all these things have energy associated with these things. The definition of energy again, the strength and vitality required for sustained physical or mental activity. I focused on drinking or with some kind of chemical substance for a long time. And so that's what manifested in my life. I do believe that our thoughts and beliefs create our reality. Our thoughts and beliefs create our reality.
Right. And that's what the meat of this conversation is. What are those things? Because there's a whole, energy around drinking and being drunk. I know that, and probably nobody would argue that. But just stopping the drinking doesn't shift to the energy of sober. Energy of sober takes actions and intentional activities, I think. I don't have the experience that it just, then I stopped and then I had this new vibe going on.
Right.
And I was trying to make a better life. It took, you even said it, it's hard work. So what is the work of that?
I'm still
what
working
is the
on
work
it, for
of it?
God's sakes.
Well, I think that's the part that would be of interest or was of interest to me. What is the hard work? Because it can be for many people, and it was for me for a long time, just not drinking. That was the hard work. Filling my mind and telling myself, don't do that, go for a walk, whatever it was to say, like, don't be isolated, all those things that AA tells you, like, don't be lonely or sad or angry or whatever. But it was, in fact, just the whole hard work was not going and buying a bottle of alcohol and drinking it. But that isn't enough. If you're going to do that, I just don't know how that works and
Well,
is satisfactory. There really is the energy of sober and then of having that better, being a better person, having a better life and experience, took actions and activities and learning about self. Like, it's just more than just stopping.
well, now I've stopped drinking, which is completely 180 degrees from what I've done for a large majority of my life. So that's a big change. That's a start. There's a different energy with that, albeit a beginning energy, but nonetheless, it's the foundation you work from. You know,
Yeah.
I like that definition. Sobriety is the condition of not having any measurable levels or effects from alcohol or drugs. Sobriety is also considered to be the natural state of a human being at birth. You've decided not to drink, so that's part one. Now you've got 30 something years, I did, of life, that just being a human being, that you have to recover from. I mean, and energetically, from how you've attempted to heal those things or put those things out over the past however long you drank, that's what you know. That's your mindset, and it's not a positive mindset. It's a self-destructive mindset. It's a selfish mindset. So I believe, once you make a choice to stop drinking, the energy that goes with that, you've made a choice that is a life-changing choice. That is the seed. That's where the energy of sober is planted. It's almost like you're starting over again from an infant, and you're going back and you're processing these things with new tools instead of medicating the way you used to. You're starting anew. It's a brand new life. It's a brand new day. Everything that you have done up until that day does not matter. Now you decided not to drink or do drugs, and you want to do something about your life. And there's a lot of things to clean up.
Yes, there are. There are a lot of things to clean up, and reality is that you find yourself still in that same life with all the nothing's any different around you except that commitment you just made to yourself. And that's hard.
Which is really that's the tough part.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing that everybody has issues with, is that you're doing these things. This is about changing you. And the only way that you can have any change in your life is you have to change yourself. And sometimes in doing that, you find out there are things in your life that they don't need to be there anymore. That's not a good or bad thing, but sometimes they are. That's the way it works out. So, you're starting brand new. When I quit drinking, it's like you just said, it's a brand new day. I've got to learn how to live now without being dependent on a chemical to change the way I feel. So in essence, I've changed everything around. I'm doing something differently. I have a desire to not drink. I've made a choice not to drink. And the second part of that choice is to do something about your life, which is, I think, it is the start on the energy of sober.
Do you remember, either initially or at any time, how you shifted? Like, for me, it was really, the first thing was about shifting my reality around me, like literally changing my schedule, choosing to do different things with my time than I had been before. And I had a lot of help to do that, but that was really a starting point. Like, what do I do with the time when I used to be drinking? If I'm not going to be drinking and spending, 3 hours a day drinking, let's say at the end of the day or in the morning or whatever, and figuring out what am I doing instead? That was like a major thing I had to figure out right away. Like that day I made the commitment, or the day after, or the week after, or the month after I got out of treatment. What am I going to do with my time now? So like how I spent my time was a big factor in the early stages of taking action. In my case, I was a young mom, so I shifted my energy around getting out of the house with my kids rather than staying cooped up in the house. I went to the park every day, and I just made these kinds of changes. This was the beginning for me and for where I was in my life. Changing patterns of activities, where I went, how much time I spent trying to do things that were healthier for me.
Yeah, I think in that regard, we had a little bit of a different beginning in the path, whereas, I started out in the AA world and sort of went through the step process. It was available. It was what I had to work with. So in the beginning, I was following those guidelines. I went back and I did the inventory thing and run through the whole gamut of things until it didn't work anymore. Until I'd reached a place where I had to change my thinking again, like we talked about. I mean, so in a way that I don't know, in a way, the energy of sober is just about a sudden shift in your mindset. The energy of drunkenness is being a victim, blaming everybody for everything, and having no accountability in your life. You don't care about your kids and your family. Then it gets to your job. That energy signature is definitely something that I wanted to leave in the past. And like you said, it wasn't easy. I mean, you've been in long-term recovery, and so have I, but I'm still working on some of these things today. I haven't healed completely, and I shouldn't say healed, but I've not completely discovered myself either in fullness, which is what I think a lot of growth is about.
I agree with you about that. The hardest part for me is just around self-care. I still, and I think that's part of that energy. You mentioned it a few times about self-care, and that's a big one for me, but certainly it's not the only thing. It's just this constant cycle of learning and trying to adjust myself. And you used the word healing. I would actually use that word for myself, healing. I think, aside from the recovery piece, it's just even going through life, we're evolving people, and this kind of attention we need to check in with ourselves and see how we're doing is really important. And I don't know how much living, in our day-to-days provide that, even culturally. I mean, it's a fast-paced society, and we value doing a lot, accumulating a lot, being better. I just don't know how much, at least I don't feel that way for myself, that the support around self-care and what it really is, which is having those longer conversations with yourself and checking in about how you're doing and where you need to grow and make intentional actions towards those places you want to develop. I'm not saying it doesn't happen for people. It happens in different ways, but it's been a struggle for me because I can fill up with the things I'm doing in my day-to-day and things I enjoy as well, responsibilities I have that I've accepted, those kinds of things. But, quiet reflection is kind of hard for me.
It's definitely hard for me. I was going to read the energy or the energy, the definition of energy. This is one of the ones I found that I sort of liked. It's called the strength and vitality required for sustained physical or mental activity, which compared to, the definition of sober, which is just freedom from alcohol, and then starting anew, being compared to a new human being, the energy that I put forth towards drinking, it carried over for a long time. It carried over when I first got sober. I read something the other day. It says your thoughts and feelings, attitudes, or whatever desires in your emotions, when you express these things in words and actions, they're projections of energy based on your personal beliefs. If I'm going along all along and I believe that I'm an alcoholic, I believe that I'm a screw up, I believe these things. It's just no different than someone thinking that if they don't go to a meeting, they're going to drink. Well, I got news for you. If you believe something to a certain degree, you're manifesting these things. So the
Yeah.
energy I'm putting behind being a victim or blaming someone for whatever is going on in my life, that energy is no longer self-serving. That's the energy of, alcohol or the drugs. The energy of sober is about healing yourself and starting fresh, which takes a shitload of work. I discover more things about myself all the time. Typically, that I should probably be living in a cave. Where are the people? Oh God! And part of the self care you're talking about, when you start, you consciously made a choice to stop drinking or whatever the behavior is that's causing you issues in your life.
Yeah.
Whether it's video games, to sit down and play video games for 8 hours a day, it's just not healthy.
No.
That's not. That's just. I don't think that's what we're meant to do. However, a lot of people do it, and they believe they can't go without doing it. It's no different than alcoholism or food or gambling or any of those things. Every thought that you have, whether it's expressed verbally or it's just in your mind, has an energy signature to it. So is it an energy signature of imbalance and it's all about me, it's selfishness and self-centered, or is it about the thoughts I'm having to grow and to be a different person? Instead of the thoughts of being when I'm drunk is like, where in the hell am I going to get my next beer and don't get my way? Too bad, so sad. You've got something that you want me to do with you. I've got my own stuff going on. I got some beer going on is what I got going on. But that's the energy. Even if you're sitting here, you're thinking about someone, even if it's your partner, it's your boss, that has an energy signature to it. You are embodying that in your energy field, which is your body and your mind. And those things that's not a balanced thought in the way that I see things. And so those thoughts, and then some of these things, you start doing these things, you act out on these things. This is what you're basing your life on. And a part of you, believes these things.
Yeah.
If not, you wouldn't continue to do the darn things, And then when you start talking to people and you say mean things to people, and it multiplies this imbalanced energy or ways of thinking, inside of yourself. And then you project it on others, and that's another thing. All those things have energy. And
Yeah.
those things are not energy of sober. Those things are energy of drunkenness or energy of not being sober.
I just am reminded of an experience I had as a sober person. And I think I had been pretty much clean for at least 10 years. Yeah, about 10 years. I had started losing my hair. It was like coming out in fistfuls, like in the shower. So I went to just a bunch of different doctors, and everybody had a different idea. They gave me some medicine, all this, but nothing really fixed it. And then I went to a chiropractor. He did like muscle testing and some other energy work. And I laid on the table there in his office, and he held his hands up above me and did some things and had me hold my, do like that muscle testing where you do resistance against his push and everything. And he looked at me and he said, "Do you worry a lot?" And I said, "I don't think so." And he goes, "I think you worry too much." And he would say the word like, say worry, and then push against my hand. And when I'd said the word worry, I had no strength. It was the oddest thing. Anyway, I went there and I was at the end of my, of where to go to try to save myself from losing all my hair. But the story about this that reminds me of what you're talking about is I went home and I suddenly became so aware of how much of my thoughts were involved in worrying about things. I had never realized that I was thinking those things. But when he made that suggestion and I went home and went back into my life, I was like blown away by how much of my internal thinking was about all the things I was worried about in my life. And that was just incredible. And I wanted to share it because what you're talking about, that thinking and the way our thoughts have this energy, is really true. But I didn't always know or was consciously aware of what I was putting energy into in my thinking and how that was manifesting. It was just incredible. And so I think too, when we're thinking about this as individuals, how can we also get in touch with knowing ourselves better and tapping into what our thinking is? Like, what are we consumed with in the background, in our thinking, that's creating these energies and ways that influence our behaviors, our interactions with other people, our attitudes? Because, man, it is so true, Curry.
I'm just listening to what you just said. And we had talked a little bit about this before, is that you go in there looking for one thing. You think it's something, you don't know what the heck it is. You're losing your hair, whatever this scenario is, but you're seeking to improve something about your life. So what are the odds that you go to a chiropractor and he tells you you're worrying too much? Yeah. All this growth comes out of a visit that was completely unrelated, or so you thought.
Yeah.
Until you listen to this guy. So the biggest part, it says to me, is when you do have an issue with something now that you're sober, you go and ask for help about it. You go look for someone that can help you out with it, instead of sitting back and like, oh, I'm doomed. I'm an alcoholic. I'm going to have to lose my hair, and all these other dramas that we put ourselves in that are just completely in a victim mindset and disempowering. So
very much so.
That's pretty cool, man. I still remember what Jay told me about hair. Did I ever tell you about that?
No.
Oh yeah, I used to. This is sort of funny. I had long hair, right? I always had long hair. This is back when I first got sober, back to 1997, 98ish, around there. And I had always had long hair. You guys never knew me, I don't think, with my hair, long hair.
No.
And anyway, I had long hair, and I went one night. I went and I picked out this. I went to Walmart, and I'm going to get me some new shampoo, because I was always having to try out new shampoos, And so I go in there. I spend like 10 minutes looking through all the shampoos. They got a boatload of them in there. And so I pick this shampoo out. I go pay for it. I get up the next morning and I'm going to try out my new shampoo. I get in the shower. I'm getting ready to go. And I look, it's a bottle of conditioner. And so I told Jay about it. And Jay said, just think about how we are conditioned, or even you're conditioned, to believe how important your hair is, and all the power you've given just your hair and what it looks like. And that day, if it wasn't, probably the next day, I went and bought a set of clippers and I cut it all off.
Wow.
Every bit of it. It's because of Jay. I said, I'm not going to get up. I get up, get the blow dry, you get all that, I cut all of it off, and I never looked back. I don't have to worry about my hair anymore. But that was just part of my, that was something I used for my self-esteem or my value. It's manifested in other ways like that in my life. So I think it's interesting you had a hair experience. Now I don't, I don't worry about hair. I cut it. It's so difficult. I cut it myself.
Yeah. That's great. I love that.
Just
free yourself from it.
Yeah, it was freeing. It was just absolutely. It's just, that's another small thing that changed my life.
Yeah.
And the energy of sober, there's two types of scenarios. I think it's service to others or service to self. Now, I guess that could mean several things. When you're drinking or you're doing drugs or whatever, it's hard to be in a place where you're flowing. I believe the energy of sober, you're finally starting to flow as a human being. Alcohol and drug addiction, you're in a closed loop, a never evolving place in your life. No matter how much, you drink or how many drugs you do, you can't escape. You can't get out of it, because it's like a movie that plays over and over again, which was really another one of the reasons I I stopped going to AA meetings. It was like it was a movie that played over and over again that had a lot of self-defeating fears involved with it. It helped me until it didn't anymore. And even those beliefs, I mean, you don't challenge people's beliefs. I know a lot of people probably don't think this way, but your thoughts and your beliefs create your reality. You can believe it or not believe it and try it out. I guess one example I could use and give someone something to practice if they wanted to. And one day I was going to work, and we've talked about this, and I would go to work, and not every day, but you'd be running with the crowd. You're trying to get there on time. I mean, it's just a fight. It's just and so there's an energy associated with that. Well, as long as I was thinking that way, I watched it. And I had all these people around me. This is the same kind of energy. These people are fighting and racing to get to work, just like me. And so I said, I'm gonna try this thing out. This is a big Zen moment in traffic for me, which I had issues with since I was driving an hour to work every day,
Yeah.
each way. I mean, that was a problem. It was prevalent, right? This shit's happening every day. And so I said, okay, I'm going to change up my thinking on this. This is like this is 2013. So I'm going to change my thinking up on this. So I decided I'm going to start running about 5 miles over the speed limit. I'm going to create my own zone. And it's the funniest damn thing. When I did that, everybody around me seemed to have the same mindset. Everybody had plenty of spacing in between the vehicles. And you're sitting there and you're like, I'm like, holy shit, there must be something to this thoughts creating a reality thing, and an energy of being balanced and centered, and not thinking, from a place of lack or blaming somebody that you're not going to get to work on time. And of course, they're all blaming each other, and then you end up being like a big blame game rolling down the road. And then I'd sit there, and then you'd see these people coming in from behind, and they're all bunched together like a herd of bees, and they're wanting to run over everybody's ass coming through the freeway. And they're like their own little energy pod, and they run through everybody that's sort of doing the spacing thing and has a different energy there. And that little ball of energy runs down through the freeway like a bulldozer, and it just passes through. And I'd still, you still maintain your mindset and energy, and it goes back to normal. It worked for me. It gave me an example of how my thinking changed my reality, and what was a co-creation of sorts. Of course, you tell people that, and they won't try it out probably. But those kind of things affect people every day.
Yeah, I think so.
It's about the self-care. When you get sober, and I know this is a little bit about the energy of sober, but for me, Deb, I had to change everything, the way I had lived my whole life. Didn't work, and it just created more stuff for me to clear out. It's ever evolving. Every day is a new freaking day, man. Did you have to did you seek out, because you didn't do the AA thing because it didn't jive with you, and after a point it didn't jive with me, but it was where I was at the time. Did you go and seek out therapy? Being that you didn't go through the sort of the program with AA, did you seek out therapy from other places, Deb? And when you did that, what was sort of your mindset at that time versus what your mindset was when you were drinking?
I think I did, but it wasn't, it was for different reasons other than sobriety. It was kind of a lot of things happened at the same time. Sobriety, but I also had, my children, and, I was trying to be a good mother and learn good parenting skills. So I took some parenting classes. That was part of that was about, again, taking care of myself, and so that I could be a good mom and be there for my kids. And then, of course, in sobriety, like you were saying, you have these dramatic, you had like these major things you had to shift, which happens for many people. The relationship gets funky now. If you're in a relationship with someone and you change because you become sober or any reason. I've had people I know who've gone to school or changed jobs, and it affects their relationship at home. But that was another element, and that was a part of counseling. But I think therapy was really counseling therapy, whatever you want to call it, was really good for me because I learned strategies I never had before, not even as a young person before drinking, of how to take care of myself, how to check in with myself, how to make decisions. Learning how to say no to things was a big, important aspect for sobriety for me, because if I was constantly just saying yes to things to be there for other people, oftentimes there was a trade-off for me to then be there for myself, because I was putting other people before my own health and wellness. So yeah, for me, it really worked. It gave me strategies I still use today and will continue. And I think I mentioned it earlier. The biggest thing was really about being able to self-reflect and be honest about things I needed to change in myself to feel better about myself.
Well, I damn sure didn't feel too good about myself, or like I wouldn't have drank the way I did.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's like everybody knows. You don't think anybody knows, but everybody knows that you're drinking too much. This one book I'm reading now, it talks about a young person that was addicted to methamphetamines. It's another path to hide things from yourself that you don't want to face, and that maybe you really don't know how to face it. You don't know what to do, and I think that's where a lot of the drug addiction goes. It went for me. I was just overwhelmed. It affected me a little bit in my living, my work, but not until in the latter parts. Well, that's bullshit because it affected every relationship I ever had. If I was drinking, it affected it. Trust me, because if you got in the way of my drinking, I threw out a nice little energy there, and it wasn't one of loving, caring, flowing service to humanity, love either, energy either. I don't know, Deb. It's a whole lot better than it used to be. I know that I just those two definitions really summed up the whole thing for me. I hadn't thought about getting sober being related to just being born on the planet. It's the same thing as getting sober. If you drank like I did, you're starting out fresh.
Yeah, I remember in one therapy session somewhere, I was in a treatment center. I'm sure you've heard this, lots of people have, that when you stop abusing yourself with drugs and alcohol, you start at the place developmentally where you started using. That's where you pick up from, because it's during the period of the use of all of those things. You stop, developing. You stop expanding in your consciousness, and so it's like wherever you are. I felt like I was around 14, which I think is, or at least I felt like that idea made sense to me, and that really helped, realizing I was learning new things that I should have learned probably 15 years earlier, and I just didn't.
I've heard that about trauma.
Yeah, trauma too.
So when you have some kind of trauma in your life, and there's a lot of smart people that have talked about this, but I mean, I drank my first beer. I was around 7 years old. Yeah, about 7 years old. Not long after that, my dad passed away. I was maybe 9 when Dad passed away. I was sitting there thinking that's something humorous when I guess when I stopped drinking, my mentality, I was about 9. I'm about
Wow.
17 now. So I'm moving up the ladder. Before you know it, I'll be a true adult one of these days before I leave the planet. I have
Oh,
one thing that's always sort of helped me out is having a good sense of humor.
yeah,
And just self-deprecating humor, not humor at somebody else's expense. I
right.
mean, just being able to laugh about it. And there's an energy with that. There's an energy with that. If you can't laugh at yourself, you're not gonna move far. I don't think
Yeah.
as you could.
Well, I mean, I like what you said about that humor too. It's really helpful if you can, I don't have a lot of jokes and things or the same kind of humor you do, but part of that I think is just around just allowing, realizing that I want to say if you make a mistake, but I don't really know. I think there's a better word for it. If things don't turn out the way you want when you attempt to do something or think about something, a new way of looking at something in your life, just to not put a whole lot of heavy judgment on it, that keeping it light and just realizing that's what being human is. I feel like it's just lighter and easier and just more pleasant. I mean, in a lot of ways, the energy of sober is an exciting thing to think about in the continual pursuit of it and what it does for us. I mean, it is an adventure about knowing yourself, right? I feel like it is.
Well, when you start out in the learning how to live world, because you've forgotten if you even knew anything, hell, before you even started drinking. A lot of people don't have tools. I didn't have any tools. And if you're brought up in environments that are not, that aren't healthy, you're going to carry these things over. I think back about a lot of things that have happened, but especially when I decided to stop drinking, life life changed for me when I did that. It's not to say that I didn't have some rough periods, and I still have issues in my thinking or in my mindset, but the biggest, I think, thing for me to remember is that first when I stopped drinking, that's when my energy shifted. That was the energy that I sort of wanted to capture. I mean, I
Mm.
know it changed with you. I mean, I think just making the decision to not drink anymore, it was huge, huge for me, Deb. Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Recovery My Way podcast. We hope you enjoyed. Deb and I had a conversation about the energy of sober. Our hope was to get across the importance of the energy of sober being a foundation from which we work from and with to build a life in recovery, to build a life as a good human being. It's not something that's separate from us, it's a part of us. It's something that we cooperate with, create with, the way of life that we're looking to manifest in sobriety. The old way of thinking didn't work. This is our opportunity to get it right. The conversation Deb and I had today was just a brief discussion, and by no means it hasn't even touched below the surface of the complexity of energy and how it plays a part in our life. We hope you enjoyed. Thanks. Thanks for joining me for another episode of the Recovery My Way podcast, a podcast about how I have somehow managed not to drink alcohol since July the 20th of 1997, and I did it my way. So until we meet again, take care and safe travels.